Chapter 2. Leah grimaced and leaned against the bed, waiting for the throbbing to subside. Now what's wrong? The pain had an eerily familiar quality. Was her knee broken too? She took a deep breath and counted to 10. Gingerly she put weight on her leg, and thankfully her knee didn't give. She rubbed it. The knee was sore, but the sharp pain had gone away. Probably twisted it getting out of bed, she mumbled. She found her robe and went out into the hall. The ward was a cheerful-looking place, with a spotless expanse of patterned linoleum that looked as if it belonged in a kitchen, not a hospital. The doors of the room were different bright colors, with animals painted across them and along the walls. A small sign on the wall marked one of the doorways as Toddler Ward Number 1. Farther down the hall another door was painted to look like the open mouth of a rabbit. Its sign read Baby Ward. Leah soon discovered that the entire floor was constructed like a giant wheel, with spoke-like halls leading to patient wards and rooms. At the hub of the wheel stood the nurses' station, a large circular desk where the nurses congregated, keeping track of charts and monitoring individual patients, with computer screens and banks of machines. The younger and sicker patients were closest to the hub. The long corridor walls were painted with scenes from fairy tales. There were 2 waiting rooms on the floor for parents and relatives, and in a spacious rec room, Leah discovered a gathering of younger kids watching a Snow White video on a giant screen TV. The rec room also had neon-colored plastic climbing toys, and the carpet was patterned with games such as hopscotch and tic-tac-toe. Leah tried the 3 doors at the end of the room and discovered video games, a snack bar and kitchen, and a library. The snack bar's counter held bowls of fresh fruit, graham crackers, and granola bars, and containers of fruit juices and bowls of ice. Vending machines lined one wall, and several tables stood in the center of the room. A young mother patiently feeding a gaunt little boy nodded at Leah. The boy had no hair and was attached to an ivy line that led to a pole beside the table. Leah shuddered. The little boy reminded her of Grandma Hall. Leah could remember visiting her sick grandmother in the hospital as though it were yesterday. She, like the little boy, her grandmother had been attached to an IV line and had been bald from chemotherapy treatments. At the time, her grandmother's wasted body had terrified Leah, who loved her grandmother dearly in spite of her mother's hostility. Leah grabbed an apple from a bowl and retreated to the library, where she sorted through teen magazines in an attempt to forget the painful memories. She flopped onto a comfortable love seat and began to read. The magazines were filled with ideas for Christmas gifts and holiday fashions and only gave her pangs of homesickness. All her friends, she was sure, would be going to holiday parties and on shopping expeditions and skating at the ice rink at Dallas's Galleria Mall. She was stuck in the hospital while her mother was thousands of miles away. No use feeling sorry for herself, Leah insisted silently. A glance at the clock showed that it was 6. Hoping she hadn't missed the dinner cart, Leah returned to her room, but stopped just outside the doorway. Another bed had been placed in the room, and on it sat a girl who looked about 5 years old. The girl was sobbing and clinging to a woman dressed in a peculiarly old-fashioned style of clothing. Her dark blue skirt brushed the floor. The sleeves of her blouse were long, the neck high. A filmy white cap covered the woman's long hair, which was twisted into a bun at the nape of her neck. She wore no makeup and no jewelry, and she had no wedding band. There, the woman cooed soothingly. Do not cry so, Rebecca. You're hurting my heart with such a flood of tears. You know I must go home to nurse the baby, but Charity and Ethan will come tomorrow. Don't go, Mama, the girl sobbed. Feeling like an intruder, Leah wasn't sure what to do. Just then, a man stepped from behind the open closet door. He, too, was dressed in a strangely old-fashioned way. His suit was dark with lapels or buttons, and he held a broad-brimmed black hat in his big round hands. He had a beard, but no mustache, and his long hair brushed the top of his collar. Come, Tilly, the van's waiting downstairs. We've a long way to go tonight, and it's beginning to snow. Papa, the child wailed, reaching for him. Don't leave me, Papa. He hugged her tightly. For the first time, the woman noticed Leah. We did not mean to disturb you, Rebecca's scared, but she'll quiet down after we're gone. Leah stammered. It's okay. I don't mind. You're not bothering me one bit. Fascinated, she stared at the threesome. She stepped forward and held out her hand to the girl. I'm Leah. We're going to be roommates. The small girl's body quivered as she struggled to stop crying. Leah, she repeated, staring at Leah's flowered robe and dark, shoulder-length hair. Are you a plain person? The question thoroughly confused Leah. Plain enough. We're Jacob and Tilly Longacre, the girl's mother explained. We're Amish. Visions of photos Leah had seen of horse-drawn buggies and farms in Pennsylvania flashed in her head. She knew absolutely nothing about the Amish. She managed a cautious smile. I'm just a regular person. We hate to leave our Rebecca, but we can't stay this night with her. Her sister Charity and her brother Ethan will come tomorrow, but until then she must be alone, Jacob explained. She's so young, Rebecca's mother said, wringing her hands. I'm not going anywhere, Leah said, feeling a surge of sympathy for little Rebecca. She knew what it felt like to be deserted. Can we be friends? The girl was quiet. She bit her lower lip, picked up a rag doll, and hugged it tightly against her chest. Will you stay in the room with me? That's my bed right there, Leah said, pointing across the room. After a few more hugs and whispers, Rebecca's parents edged toward the door. At the doorway, Tilly turned to Rebecca and said, Remember what I've told you. The Lord's angel will watch over you until we can be with you. She smiled at Leah and said, Thank you, and then they were gone. For a moment, Rebecca stared with wide blue eyes at the empty doorway. Slowly, tears began to slide down her cheeks. Flustered, Leah reached out and awkwardly patted the tiny girl. Would you like to watch TV? Rebecca shook her head. That's a pretty doll. What's her name? Rose, Rebecca said, sniffing. The doll was unadorned as the child who clutched her. Rebecca wore a simple long nightdress with a high neck, and a cap like her mother's over a head of wispy golden curls. Her cheeks looked rosy, her blue eyes red and swollen for crying. Leah felt at a loss. She didn't have any siblings. Rebecca looked up at her. Are you an angel? No way, Leah said with a smile. She sat on the edge of Rebecca's bed. Do you know why you're in the hospital? Rebecca held out her arm. A bright red splash stained the inside of her wrist and lower arm. It looked swollen. A spider bit me, and I got sick. Sitting close to the child, Leah could feel heat emanating from her small body, and she realized that Rebecca's cheeks were rosy because of a fever. Did you bite him back? She asked. Rebecca looked startled and then giggled. No. Making Rebecca laugh made Leah feel better than she had all day. Two nurses bustled into the room, and Rebecca shrank back. We have to put in an IV, one of the nurses explained. Terrified, Rebecca shook her head. I'll stay with you, Leah said quickly. One of the nurses eyed her. Are you her sister? Her roommate. Rebecca clutched at Leah's hand. Don't leave, Leah. The single plea cut like a knife through Leah's heart, and she knew there was no way she could leave Rebecca. Leah moved closer to Rebecca and reached for her small hand. Look at me, not them, she instructed. Obediently, Rebecca fixed her gaze on Leah. This is nothing, Leah said, hoping she sounded more convincing than she felt. A piece of cake. Cake? Can I have some cake? Leah remembered the snack bar. If it's all right with the nurse, I'll get you a cookie or something as soon as they've finished. The nurse slipped open Rebecca's chart. No food restrictions. The dinner cart's on its way, but a cookie would be fine. Lie still, honey, the technician said. This will just be a little prick. Leah smiled reassuringly at Rebecca, who lay rigid on the bed. From the corner of her eye, Leah watched the lab technician gently slide the needle of the IV under the skin on the back of Rebecca's hand. The child trembled, but she didn't move. Leah felt